1 million miles. That's how much is on this thing, and that is round trip to the moon twice. Let's take a look at this RAM. So this is actually Tyler Hoover's 2004 Dodge Ram 2500. You guys have seen it on his channel already. 995,000 some odd miles. It's really close to 1 million. I just real quickly looked up on my phone, how far is it to the moon? 238,000 some odd miles to get there. So this truck has almost traveled there and back to the moon. That's crazy. But there's been a lot of maintenance along the way and a lot of parts replacements. So to think that it has 1 million miles and all the parts are original, no, they're not original. We just finished sealing up some more leaks on this. You guys have seen this in Hoovie's Garage video where we did the front timing cover gasket and a whole bunch of other gaskets. Those things are happy. The transmission had some issues with leaks. We got that fixed. We'll take a look at that today. But over the years of when I worked in previous shops, before I got into European cars really heavily, I did a lot of Dodge Ram work. We're going to take a look at some of the things that commonly fail on these. It doesn't matter if it's a Hemi, a 360, a Cummins, a V10. They're pretty much the same problems for the most part. So here's our 24 valve Cummins diesel, and these obviously are very, very good engines. The rest of the truck can be problematic in various different areas, but the engines are pretty much bulletproof. Well, they're bulletproof. And you guys know the K&N filters, they have the 1 million mile warranty. This one's actually almost out of warranty. It literally has reached the extension of their warranty, 1 million miles. It's crazy. You can see some modifications and things going on around there. I'm not too sure what all that is. The one thing that commonly fails on these is right down here you can see the fan. So what this fan is actually bolted to is a clutch, and on a lot of older cars they had a thermal clutch. It just used temperature to engage the clutch. On these trucks they're either hydraulically actuated, or in newer trucks they were electrical actuated. Those frequently failed. Either the control module for the clutch or the actual clutch itself, the wiring or the motor. I think there was a point where I was working in a previous shop in the area. There was a lot of guys doing construction and farm work, and these Dodge Ram diesels were just all over the place. I believe there was one year that at least 2 or 3 times a month we were doing fan clutches. I mean, it was just like, wow. I didn't think that would be such a big problem, but they are. So if you buy one of these, you could probably look to doing a fan clutch at some point. Actually, you'll get a check engine light. It'll say performance of the fan or whatever is not working. You can actually overheat your engine because it quits working. So definitely plan on that if you're looking into one of these. This little box right here is some kind of aftermarket tuner chip or something like that. That's nothing to do with the stock car. We'll go ahead and move this out of the way, and here's our relay and fuse box. And you guys that are familiar with Chrysler vehicles, especially 03, 45 and newer, this is not just called a fuse box, it's called a TIPM, Totally Integrated Power Module. So we see relays here and fuses. But what you don't see is inside of this box on the circuit board there are small relays soldered to the board. These are a common failure point on Chargers, Challengers, Rams, minivans, all kinds of Chrysler products. One of these relays that you can't see, it's inside of this box, will fail, and you have to send it off and get it rebuilt or replaced. I do believe they had to be programmed at a dealership. But your lights, your headlights, things will start acting wonky, different things will fail on you. It ends up being the TIPM. So I've seen a lot of those. I've seen a lot of TIPMs, fan clutches, and now we'll move on down the line. Anytime you get an older truck, you're going to have things that are not included at the factory that were put on by the previous owner. Things like this relay hanging. They may have bypassed something or added something, a feature to the vehicle. There's various different vacuum or air lines or whatever's going on there. So you get to learn those things when you buy any used truck. What did they do here? Why did they do that? Sometimes there are things hooked up like this that aren't even being used anymore because it failed, but they didn't bother to take the pieces out, they just sit there. So make sure whatever, before you start ripping and tearing, say, well, I don't know what that is, I don't need that anymore. It may actually be connected to something, and throw a check engine light just because you ripped it out of there. On Duramaxes and Power Strokes, the turbos, when they give issues, it can be a major catastrophe just to get to the thing. Luckily on a Cummins, it's literally just right over there, underneath the exhaust manifold. Now these don't give a lot of trouble. A lot of people replace them with bigger turbos or try to do different setups, but they really don't give a lot of trouble in their stock form. That's another bulletproof part of this Cummins. Here we can see right here the condenser for the air conditioning. I can tell it's been replaced. It looks like brand new aluminum. And that doesn't surprise me. I did tons of air conditioning jobs on these Dodge Rams. It seems like that the systems are just not very robust. They do work well, but they don't last as long as you would think they should. And just like I've told you guys before, on any vehicle, when a compressor locks up or has catastrophic failure, you're going to get a complete system. You're going to get receiver dryer, expansion valve, you're going to get condenser, you're going to get the evaporator core flushed, everything basically replaced. And that's not even me trying to get money from anybody. That's the fact that these companies will not even honor the warranty unless those things have been replaced. They want to see the receipts for that if something goes wrong in the future with the new compressor. So let's go ahead and move to the interior.
Well, ladies and gents, we don't normally start at this view, but with a million-mile car, we really need to wonder about how good is this driver's seat. With a million miles sat in that seat, how good can it be? And it's in really pretty good shape. There is a little bit breaking down here, and that's pretty much to be expected because, you know, as you roll out of the car over and over again, it just breaks down. And so it does have a bit of a, you know, oh good, I can feel springs in there. Yeah, it's pretty broken down there, but it looks like the rest of it is in pretty good shape. So let's hop on in and take a peek. So, ladies and gents, here we are starting at our normal spot now at the steering wheel. And let me tell you, being in the driver's seat, it doesn't feel bad. You don't feel how that part that's missing. But we have our standard gauge cluster, and if I turn our light here, you will see, there it is, 995,765 miles. A few more trips back and forth to, you know, we could take it to the lake a few more times. We could help him get that closer to there. But nonetheless, if we look up here at the dash, wow. I've seen worse dashes on other cars where they're cracked and the foam is spilling out. That's in really good shape. It is, oh, apparently the Bluetooth is not happy. It has not found any connection and no USB connection. It is not a happy little aftermarket JVC radio, but we'll move on. It does have a lot of hard plastic in here, but that's what to expect in a truck like this. This is a work vehicle for the most part. As we look around, it's in really good shape. The other seats are fine. This is a 6-seater. Does have 2 full cab doors in the back and enough room to sit 6 people. If we move up, that headliner again, looking good. There is a little bit of yellowing on the dome light, but nothing terrible. Nothing to complain about. If we do look at the gauges, nothing fancy there, but that's standard for most trucks. Keep it simple. Simple adjustments on getting into our 4-wheel drive ranges. I think the wizard had something he wanted to share about the dash, so let's see what he has to say.
Not too long ago, you guys saw a video on a Chevy Avalanche that we did a heater core on, an evaporator core and everything, and you saw that it was a nightmare. It was just so many pieces apart that had to come out of it. The Chevys are really difficult. But I mentioned that the Dodges are not so bad. And here's a picture you can see that all you have to do is unbolt the frame carrier and a few things, put the steering column down, and you can just move the whole dash, set it, put some carpet here to protect the seats, and you can actually set the dash on the seat and just get in there and work. Instead of taking 15, 20, who knows how many hours, it can be done in about 8, 6 if you're fast. So that's one thing that is going good for these. Although it is a common failure, you can have the recirculate door actuator. You can have heater core, evaporator core go out, and also there's various other actuators for the HVAC system that can go out. and requires the dash to come apart. But again, it's not that bad on these, not compared to what you guys saw on the Avalanche, which was pretty much a nightmare. But still doesn't top the video you guys saw of the Range Rover. Make sure you check that one out. Scroll through and find the Range Rover video. That was one of the hardest ones we've ever done. It was so tedious. So in Hoovie's Garage video, you saw that we did the timing cover gasket, oil pan gasket. We also put some Lucas power steering additive into his steering system because with the amount of miles on it, he's not really looking to rebuild the whole system. He just wants to stop the little bit of a leak that it had, and it'll get him by for quite a long time. And you can see on the steering gearbox where it was pouring out oil, it's not anymore. Our timing cover up here, nice and dry. He's driven it for quite a while and it is nice and happy and dry. Our oil pan is also nice and dry. Junior Mint did the work on this one and he did a great job. Here we see an AC compressor and you can tell that it's brand new. Hoovie informs me that is the 4th AC compressor that this vehicle has had in its life. That doesn't surprise me. Like I mentioned to you guys, the air conditioning systems on these Dodge Rams, they're not the best, they do the job, but they don't last as long as you would think they should. And when they fail, it's a complete system redo. I've done quite a number of them. This one's no exception. Right now it's got nice ice-cold AC, it's working great. Another common failure point on these Rams are the ball joints here, which we've already tested these, they're fine, but they'll have play up and down on them. And these are good. There's U-joints, the cross joints are good. Brake pads are about half gone, but they're still good. Over here, nothing loose. Cross joint is good there. Brake pads are good.
Okay, so Wizard, what's this big bar here with this shock absorber to the side?
So this bar right here is actually connects the two left and right wheels. So here's our pitman arm, and this one goes over to the right wheel, and then this one here connects over to the left wheel. The shock absorber here is basically that. It's a shock absorber, but it's used as a steering dampener, so when you go over large bumps, these wheels are very large, and you don't want it yanking the steering wheel out of your hand. This slows the movement, so it's nice and easy on your hands. There's a lot of places on here that are still got a little bit of slime on them. We need to take it to a pressure washer and clean it off. Actually, Hoovie can do that. But when the oil pan and the timing cover gasket were leaking, it was just completely coated. In fact, it was so bad that I thought that the transmission may be leaking, but I told him, I said, all I can do is take care of your engine, clean everything off. You need to drive it for a while and let me know. And we were right. The transmission pan was leaking. It was just so coated under here, you couldn't hardly tell. And that has been done. Daniel's son actually did that today. So it's got a new filter, new pan gasket. I believe this is the 4th transmission that this vehicle has had. About every 250,000 miles, it was time for a new transmission. So hopefully this one lasts a little while longer for him. U-joints are good. We'll move back to our transfer case. Everything looks nice and clean there, except for age. It's got a little bit of road salt or something on it. We did replace this, you remember in Hoovie's video, this is the output seal from the transfer case. It was pouring oil out of here, and it no longer is anymore. It's nice and dry. Nice U-joint there. Here is, looks like to be a stock muffler. I could be wrong. Let me take a look. I don't see any markings on it.
No, there's a marking on it.
Yeah.
I can see it's bumpy.
There we go, MagnaFlow. No, it's not stock. So that's probably why it has the sound that it does. The rear differential does have a little play, and I'll demonstrate that. Just a little bit. That doesn't surprise me with a million miles. I told Hoovie with that amount of play, it's perfectly fine. How much longer is this thing going to last? I mean, the vehicle keeps going. Maybe it'll go to 1.5 million miles. I don't know. But it's doing fine. I told him not to worry about that till it causes trouble. And then he can look into getting a differential rebuild, but it's doing fine right now. It does have airbags back here for increased load capacity, so the rear of the vehicle doesn't sink as bad. Check our brakes here. They look fairly new. Brakes look good there. Here's our spare tire. It's one thing we always check here at Omega, which frequently is not checked at other places. We can see some of these red lines being ran here again. So up in the interior, there was actually a gauge under the dash with a little switch. And what that does is control the air pressure going to these airbags. So you can raise and lower the rear end for the load that you're carrying. This thing hauled a lot of what they call hot shot truck. They used it on fifth wheel trailers. That's how it got so many miles so fast. But you can tell that they took care of it. And not surprisingly, it's had 4 transmissions, 4 AC compressors, radiators. It's had all kinds of stuff, injector pumps. But I imagine that was probably cheaper than buying a new truck every time something went wrong. So let's go ahead and get this thing on the ground. You guys saw a video not too long ago, I think it was in the summer, on diesel trucks, to buy and not to buy. Would this truck be in the to buy? Absolutely it would. These are in the years where you get good power, good efficiency. There's some electronic controls to make it more comfortable and usable and get more power. But it's around 7, 8, 9, you start getting into these trucks where they're just choking them with emissions. I know of a few guys that haul for a living using these trucks, and it seems like every time they turn around, some sensor is sending them into a reduced power mode, and they're on the side of the road going, not again. I just had $3 grand or $5 grand or $7 grand into these other sensors. Now I guess some other emission sensor's gone bad. On the newer trucks, if anything is out of whack with the emission system, it will take and rob your power from you. It will send you into reduced power mode, and now you can't haul as well.
Okay, Carlos, so what are the years that they should be looking for?
Any of the late 90s all the way up to 04, 05, the Duramaxes, the Rams, which is the Cummins, or the Power Strokes, they're really good. The 7.3 basically. When they switch to 6.4, 6.7 Power Strokes, although they're powerful, although they're cool engines, there's in order to go through and do the deletes, the EGR deletes, and all these different changes and mods to make it easier to work on and less frequent to break down, you're not spending a couple grand anymore, you're spending 15 grand or more. It just gets really expensive really fast.
Okay, so how much do you think it costs for those 4 air conditioners and 4 transmissions and all the other repairs they've had to do on this truck so far for their 1 million miles?
Thousands of dollars. Transmission rebuild was probably at least 4 or 5 grand. That's labor and the rebuild together. And that's each time it was rebuilt. And then with the air conditioning system, it was probably $1,500 or more every time it went out. Unless it was just something simple, but as we've seen here, the whole system's been replaced. It very likely was a compressor lockup. They've probably spent thousands keeping this thing running up to the 1 million miles. But if they calculate how much they spent on repairs versus if they bought a truck every 250,000 miles, they still came out ahead keeping this thing running. The end goal with this truck was to use it to haul loads until the bitter end, until as far as this thing can go, which is basically 1 million miles. It wasn't for resale value. It wasn't for trying to get the most money next time you sell it. That wasn't the goal. The goal was the cheapest way to keep this thing going as long as possible. Then they got their work out of it. Then they buy a new truck.
So when exactly does this officially die?
Well, the frame, the body, everything else is still working on this. If the engine were to finally shell out You know, trucks are expensive to buy today. I would almost be worth it to put more money into it. But you really would have to calculate, especially if you were the previous owner of this truck, finally there reaches a point where you could just go buy another truck. And I think that's what the point they reached when they sold this to Hoovie. Now, how much longer will it last for Hoovie? It could last another 200,000 miles. But now we're in the hands of no longer somebody making a living, a commercial business off the truck. Now we're having someone, Hoovie, owns this truck now. Now we're talking about resale. We're talking about how much did I invest versus how much is it worth. Now the game plan changes. How much did he buy it for? How much is it worth? If he bought it for, I don't know what he paid for it, but let's just say 10 grand in the motor shell tomorrow, he'd really have to start thinking, is this going to exceed the value of the vehicle? Being that it has 1 million miles on it, it's not going to be worth a whole lot because people are going to be like, I'm going to buy this truck and something's going to fail pretty fast. And it can. It's a very cool truck, and this is just how I would have a truck. I don't have the rear lower than the front, looking stupid. I don't have it 6 feet in the air either, with mud tires that are bald. This thing was used for what it was meant for. It's hauling. In order to do the hauling, they didn't modify the suspension because it's set up the way it is to do that. It is a very good truck. It's a cool truck. I like these trucks. If you're curious what kind of tools we used to work on this truck, check my Amazon affiliates link in the description below. We get a small cut and we really appreciate it. Make sure to hit the subscribe button because there's several cars scheduled coming in. They're going to be great videos as well. Thanks for watching.